Good morning, everyone. That's Patrick Horka. I'm in the deal team from the Technology Fund. Let's wait another 1 or 2 minutes. Maybe some people have problems with the dialing, and then we start with our webinar just in 2 or 3 minutes. So I think we can start now. Hello again. My name is Patrick Horka. I'm in the deal team from the Technology Fund. I'm here together with Hannes Zellweger. We will also jointly discuss the questions at the end of the session. Right now, I will guide you through our webinar, through the Technology Fund, and what we do and how you can apply to the Technology Fund, under which conditions. Maybe some housekeeping in the beginning. You see on the GoToWebinar panel, you see one tab where you see questions. So whatever questions you have already now or during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the question tab, and we will address them at the end of the session. Any questions which will still remain open because we were not able to answer them, or the question was not kind of written in an exact way, you can raise your hands. So you go to the attendee tab, and you can raise your hand at this attendee tab. And we will see then, after we answered all the questions, we will see which hands have been raised, and we can unmute you at that stage, and you can raise your questions in an ordered way, and we try to answer them. But please make sure your microphone will be then is really working. Initially, we should try to answer the questions in a written format first. All right, so we have another 4 attendees joined, so it's good that we waited a little bit for others to come, and I think we should start now. So welcome to our first webinar for the Technology Fund. We have been doing several sessions, on-site sessions already, events already, but we also recognize that when we do an on-site info event in Zurich, for example, that startups which are very busy and coming from Bern, they might not want to go to Bern. So now we try another format. We are doing a webinar, and we're also happy to receive your feedback if you like this kind of approach. So around the mechanism, the Technology Fund. The Technology Fund comes initially from the BAFU. It's the Bundesamt für Umwelt. We are 2 companies mandated to manage this mandate. So it's Southpol Carbon. Hannes and myself, we are from Southpol Carbon, together with Emerald Venture Technologies. So we look at all cases, and we will also guide you through the process, and we will manage the portfolio companies onwards. How does the Technology Fund work? It's financed through the CO2 levy, the Swiss CO2 levy, and we try to help companies to gain cheap financing through banks. So we provide loan guarantees. So this loan guarantee can be up to 3 million, and the duration of such a loan guarantee is up to 10 years. And in general, we take all the risks for the bank. So the bank feels comfortable to provide a loan to the company, which is in an early stage, typically too early to provide any loans, but we help the company to get this loan with this guarantee. The interest rate for such a loan will be around 1 or 2%, but this has to be negotiated between the company and the bank. So here we don't interfere at all. There's a yearly fee of 0.9%, which is paid from the company to the technology fund for covering administrative costs. Besides the loan, the company also has to provide, let's put it this way, besides the guaranteed loan, the company also has to provide 40% own means. What does it mean? That they have, typically it's a 40% equity, or it can also be loan, but then a non-guaranteed loan where the technology firm is not providing a guarantee. So the total is, as an example, if you have a 5 million project you want to finance with your company, and then 60% can come, up to 60% can come from the technology fund, that's up to 3 million, and the remaining 2 million have to come through another investor. This would be 2 million. All right, so this is the general mechanism. Let's look at the advantages of the technology fund. So first of all, it's a guarantee scheme, and with the guarantee you get a loan, so there is no dilution, there is no equity which has to be given away by the startup to get these funds. So the ownership remains with the founders. And the second advantage is there is a very low interest rate. As said before, we guarantee the bank to get paid back in case there's a default from the company, and that gives a very low interest rate. Basically, there's the risk is basically only if the Swiss government defaults, then the bank will not get paid, but this likelihood is very low, at least for that moment. And further, the third point is, of course, you deal with experts which confirm your business plan. So if you have a technology fund support, you can also, in an easier way, go to other investors and seek some finance. What are the criteria in order to get a guarantee from the technology fund? So there are 5 main criteria which have to be met. First of all, it has to be a climate-friendly product. So what does it mean? Since the technology fund is financed through the CO2 levy, the company, the startup, somehow has to show that there is a reduction in CO2 emissions. This can be direct or indirect. So it doesn't have to be like a kind of a renewable energy project or so. It can also be in a direct way. For example, if you improve with an app the way people use mobility, or you use public transportations, so you actually increased the amount of people using public transportation instead of using a car, and this could be an indirect way on reducing CO2 emissions. So the second point, and we can give further examples later after the session on that, because that's always a little bit a tricky way. The second point is around innovation. So of course the project or the company has to have a certain innovation. We need to see that the company has either some intellectual property or is leading with some kind of innovation in a sector which is climate friendly. And then the third is a competitive position. If the product or if the solution already exists, then the technology fund will not support such a company. The market readiness, this means that we need to see already, like the minimum is a ready prototype. We usually also seek some revenues from the company. We need to see some traction. So we need to be convinced that this startup is able to scale. In terms of credit worthiness, so we're not like a bank, so we don't have the same criteria in terms of credit worthiness as a bank, but we need to feel comfortable that the startup is able to pay back the loan in the given time period. So we need to see a business plan which shows that the money which we provide, the loan which we provide, can be paid back under reasonable assumptions. How does the application process work? So there are 4 steps in the application. So the first step is an online check on our website, and we have another slide for that. On our website, you can do a 1-minute check, and you can see how these criteria are defined. So if you answer all of them in the right way, then you see, okay, you actually comply with the technology fund. And of course, during that process, you can always also call us on questions you have. So if you feel comfortable, you can then apply for a free online application and do a preliminary check by the technology fund. This is for free. So we do that for free. We give you a feedback on where you stand. Of course, if it's approved, it goes in the next step. If it's not approved, we will tell you why you don't comply with the technology fund yet. Once denied, it doesn't mean that you cannot apply again. So we will help you. It's an interactive process. We will help you to give you feedback and say, hey, where you should or can improve in order to reach a guarantee facility. So it's not black or white, and it's an interactive process. We will also usually have a phone call during that process. So if you're approved in the preliminary check, we go through a multi-level due diligence. At that stage, you will need to pay 1,000 Swiss francs. That's kind of let's say, commitment fee. Of course, the cost we incur during the due diligence is much higher, but we want to make sure that the companies which apply for this guarantee facility really want it, and they're also willing and able to put some effort into the due diligence, because it's not only us which are doing the work, it's also the company which have to provide all the relevant due diligence documents. Whenever after the due diligence is performed successfully, we then provide to the committee our opinion about the company, and the committee from the BAFU is deciding whether or not this company receives support or not. The committee, you see who sits in the committee on our website, so you might want to have a look. The committee there are people from the Swiss-German part, there are people from the French-speaking part of Switzerland, and from the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland. We have people from the academia, from more on the business side. So the idea is really to have a diversified committee to decide on the startup support. And again, during the multi-level due diligence process, if somehow there is a negative decision on this process, you can always come back and reapply and start from step 1. Again, we will give you there some detailed feedback and tell you why we are not comfortable with submitting to the committee and what you have to change in order to comply with the requirements. If you get approved by the committee, you will pay another 2,000 Swiss francs. So in total, to get an approval, it costs you 3,000 Swiss francs. Yeah. So next, a little bit numbers and statistics. The technology fund could provide up to 500 million in loan guarantees. As said before, up to 3 million per company. Right now, that's data from end of 2017. So right now, we allocated already 70 million of guarantees. End of 2017, we allocated 40 million. So you see there is still a large amount of funding which has not been spoken. The technology fund, there will not be a lack of funding for the technology fund. It's rather a lack of startups which are complying with our criteria. So we are happy for every startup which is applying, and we are happy to give solid feedback to these startups. A little bit more statistics on the applications. If you look here at the applications, we have around 30 approved projects. That's again end of 2017. 48 are still in the process in the first step pre-selection or during a due diligence process. 16 of the projects have been withdrawn and 50 declined. So in general, we can say after the pre-selection, we have around an 80% success chance. So we are trying very hard, and also in the interest for the startups, we're trying very hard in the pre-selection already. So that's the part when you don't have to pay anything. We're trying very hard to give you an honest feedback, and if the company doesn't comply with the criteria, we try to stop it in an early stage, because the due diligence process is it takes some time on both sides, and we don't want you to spend time on something which won't reach success. But again, there are companies which are not succeeding, and we cannot guarantee success. Otherwise, we wouldn't do the due diligence on it. All right, and right now, you see there are 143 applications. Right now, we do have over 200 applications already, because the statistics are from end of 2017. So historically, around 40% of the applications have been declined in the pre-selection stage. And after the pre-selection, as said, 20% have been declined at the later stage, either during the due diligence or then at the committee decision. Now that's how the 1 minute check looks like. You can find the 1 minute check under technology fund.ch. You will have like German, Italian, French, and English, so you can do it in all 4 languages. And here you also have further explanation on what we mean with the different questions. So if you move over the question, there is a pop-up and you see how we define the specific criteria. You can click on apply, and then the preliminary check will pop up. So 18 questions. And when actually finishing the preliminary check, you can upload your investor presentation, and if available, your business plan together with the last yearly financial statement, and you will start the pre-selection process for us. Yeah. So that's a snapshot of our portfolio. You see there are different companies in different sectors. For example, I just pick random companies now. You have Julia. Julia, for example, recovers heat from the shower. So the water which you use for the shower is preheated. You use less energy. Or for example, you have SmartMe. It's a company which is developing smart meters, which are especially now with the energy strategy 2050 very useful to do Eigenverbrauchsgesellschaften. You have a company like Urban Farmers. They do urban farmer rooftops, a mix between fish production and vegetable production. You can you find the whole portfolio. You find also on the website, so that might be handy for you to interact with these portfolio companies before you apply, if you want so. And here you see the whole management agency. This is a mix between Emerald Venture employees and South Pole employees. Also on the website, the link is provided on the slide. You have all the contact information, so you can contact us. We are happy to help you with the applications. Also on the website, you find a video which explains the technology fund. You find documents on the due diligence process and what kind of documents have to be submitted during this due diligence process. more information about the organization, about the committee, about news about upcoming events, etc., etc. So yeah, have a look on the website, and yeah, I think now we are through the main slides, and we are happy to take any questions. So again, please type them in the question tab. So far, we have received. Did we receive any questions so far, Hannes?
Yes. So we have a few questions about the nature of the 40%. So the own contribution in this mechanism. One was if it has to be the fund of the company itself, or if it has to be an external investor. Maybe to explain that a bit more in detail. So what plays a role here is first the date of application. So assuming a company applies to technology funds, the date of the application plays a role to us because we can allow all liquidity liabilities as own contributions of the company, or everything else which comes into the company from the date of application until the point where the committee decides positively, and 4 months later. So basically, like the date of application you have to keep in mind, and 4 months after the decision of the committee. Everything which comes into the company in that time, we can account for the 40%, but there are some limitations. For instance, we can tell some examples which cannot be accounted is like own work. So like let's assume like so it has to be basically cash at some point coming into the balance sheet of the company.
Maybe I add, thank you, Hannes. Maybe I add one comment. So it's clear. So when you apply and you just did an equity round, and this equity is used up during the application process, that doesn't matter for us because during the application you showed your 40%, and that's fine. Because we often have this this question that okay, I have a cash burn rate from X, and actually the 40% is shrinking during the application process.
Exactly. And yeah, a similar question asked was the nature of the loans of that 40%. What is the nature of that loans?
The nature of the loans, you mean subordinated loans or senior loans or junior loans, probably. The person who asked this question, maybe you can raise your hand later if you don't answer this correctly or you're not satisfied with the answer. So basically, it's up to you what kind of nature the loan should have. It can be any kind of loan, subordinated or not, as long as it's committing to the 40% for your project. So it's just we look at the 100% financing need. And 60% can be provided with a guaranteed loan through the technology fund, and 40% have to come through other channels.
Another interesting question posed was at how much revenue we are looking to qualify for the criteria competitive position. And the question, is it in the range of 1 million or 5 million revenue, I assume?
Yeah, so maybe this is, competitive. I go to this slide again. The competitive position is more about the product and the solution. So are you competitive towards what is already existing on the market? But your question goes into the creditworthiness, right? And so we want to see that there's a need and there's a demand in the market for your product. So it's hard to say exactly how much revenue we look for. It could also be a smaller revenue stream, but you have a strong sales pipeline already in place. So if you see, okay, it's a bit of a mix, right? So if you have a very strong competitive position, you have some revenues, and then we believe that you can easily scale your revenues through this strong competitive position, then it's also fine. But in terms of numbers, I guess we need to look at it in detail. What you say, Hannes, like it varies quite a lot depending on the product as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, creditworthiness for us is how plausible, how easy is it to verify the the financial business plan for the next few years.
Yeah, yeah. And revenue is one part, but then also maybe a sales pipeline, partnerships with strong partners, distribution channels, existing distribution channels, etc. So yeah, we cannot answer this like black and white, not possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, feel free to submit your project actually as early as possible, and you can already contact us as early as possible. Even though you feel, hey, I don't comply yet with the criteria, contact us, describe your case, and we can give you initial feedback when you should apply for the technology fund.
So we just got quite a few more questions. A few concern the process, and first maybe one which is in general nature. So the question is, what's the nature of the guarantee? Is it a one-off guarantee with which you get one loan from the bank, or can you use it like guarantee line and use it up through various loans over time? Maybe I can answer that question. So basically the loan, by the way, companies can apply several times to the technology fund up to this maximum of 3 million per company is reached. But in general, the loan is a piece of paper, a letter to the bank, and the bank in general doesn't give one product, like one loan product in return for that loan guarantee, but rather a framework contract. So let's say a framework contract which allows the company then later to pull a loan anytime. And it also happens that maybe it's not needed right now, this liquidity, so just the loan framework is agreed with the bank, and maybe a few years later, the actual loan then is drawn.
Yeah. So the only contract which is signed and that's fixed is our guarantee contract, and the guarantee contract goes over the whole volume. So let's say you ask for like a 3 million guarantee, and you have to pay the 0.9% yearly fees for this guarantee. But then on the loan side with the bank, you can draw the loan whatever has been agreed with the bank in the end. So we don't interfere on that. We just give the guarantee to the bank, so they are actually able to provide you with the loan.
On the process, we have a few questions. So one is, do we have to pay the 2,000 francs fee if you get deadline? The answer is no. So that way it's quite a nice for the applications policy. How long does the total process take of the application? That depends, I would say, mainly on the applicant, because we already discussed that the date of application plays an important role for the 40%. That also means that often applicants are not so much in a hurry to then go onwards with the process. But I would say like companies which have the documents ready and are a bit sporty could do it in 3 months. The average though is 4.5 months, which it takes from the initial application to the decision of the committee, and after the decision of the committee, within a few days, you could go then to the bank to get the loan.
But maximum 3 months after the committee. So the contracts have to be signed latest 3 months after the committee. And if this fails, then the approval by the committee will be neglected. So you have to reapply again. So you have to contract the bank with the loan, or you have to sign the loan contract with the bank within 3 months.
Then next question is, can we apply anytime, or is there a specific board every X months?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can apply anytime, and we do have a committee meeting every 6 weeks. So actually, it really doesn't matter when you apply because you cannot predict when exactly we will go to the committee meeting. I mean, there are several factors which depend, as Hannes said, it depends a bit on if the documents are ready on your hand, how much questions are still pending on our side, etc. By the way, there's a document on website which you can download where you see the different steps, what is done during those steps, and how much time we generally need for those steps. Yeah, in general, it's advisable to go fast through the due diligence process, and we try our best to do the same on our side to be efficient, because documents become outdated, and when the documents become outdated, you have to resubmit financial documents, etc., and we have to rewrite the application to the committee. So in general, it's advisable to really go in the due diligence process when the documents are ready. The pre-selection can be done in an earlier phase. Also, here on the website, you have the list of documents needed for the due diligence process, so you have a feel on what is needed.
Yeah, another question we got is concerning NDA. So the participant is interested if it's possible to not disclose information about the committee for application, and only after NDA has been signed with the technology funds. So that is definitely possible. We normally provide NDA after the application, but if that is required, that's no problem to already sign NDA and then afterwards proceed with the application process. Then we have a very concrete question: when is the next committee meeting? Well, the thing is, like, we also have our internal review periods, and so in a way, it's at the point of the application, it's not very useful yet to know the date of committee meetings, but in general, it's, I think, every 1 month, every 6 meetings,
every 6
like
weeks,
that.
yeah.
So it's frequent.
Yeah, so it really doesn't matter when you apply. I mean, you cannot really aim to a specific committee meeting.
Then maybe let's take a question. By the way, I hope we can answer all the questions here, but of course we will follow up shortly in the end of the event and see that we have properly answered all the questions individually.
And maybe when we went through all the questions and they're still open questions, you can still raise them, of course, by writing. If you feel it's too complicated, the question, you can also raise your hand in the attendee tab, and then we can unmute you and we can discuss a certain question also orally.
Yeah, maybe how about we take a question about climate friendliness. The question is, what does climate friendly mean? Does the CO2 reduction has to be a direct result, or indirect saving also qualifies?
Yeah, for that reason, maybe I switched the slide to show some examples. So in indirect can be possible. Where do we have a good example? This is very direct, also direct. Yeah, maybe we just do an example. For example, if you design e-mobility charging station, right? So you don't really directly reduce the emissions, but because you increase the density of charging stations for electric cars, there will be an uptake of electric cars in the country, right? So there are studies which show that as more charging stations exist in a country, as more electric cars will be purchased. So that's an indirect way of reducing emissions, because you compare electric cars against fossil fuel driven cars.
Okay, so an interesting question. I think is like a practical question many applicants have after the application. The question is, taking the hypothesis we need 5 million Swiss francs, maybe we will find investors for 2 million, but not coming only if they are sure we will get the technology fund loan. So basically the question is, during the application process, the company doesn't know yet if the 2 million Swiss francs, which would be the 40% other means, will actually go into the company, which will then allow for the 3 million from technology funds. That I think is a common problem or a challenge. I think applicants have to be aware that the committee cannot approve multiple scenarios. So the committee can only approve one scenario, which would be, for instance, the company has an overall financing need of 5 million Swiss francs, or the company has overall finance need of 3 million Swiss francs, and then a corresponding financial plan has to be shown. So the company has to decide that beforehand, which amounts of own means, other contribution are realistic to raise, and then has to do this decision basically. On the other hand, as we said before, it's also possible to apply multiple times to technology fund. For instance, first make one round and then later maybe during another round do another application to technology funds. Should we at the question concerning the prototype? So the question is, we said a requirement of technology fund is market-ready prototype, but if we had a market-ready prototype, we actually don't need the money anymore. So this critics was raised.
Yeah, I mean, it depends a little bit, right? So there are other financing support in Switzerland, for example, the Pilot- and Demonstrationsprojekte, where you can funding, which is a little bit in an earlier stage. The technology fund really should bridge the gap between companies which have a prototype and want to scale now, and between companies which easily find financing, which are always strong in the market. So we aim to be, or we should be, in the middle between that. Yeah. And of course it's a flexible way, so that it also goes back to the question, okay, well, how much revenues do you need? And revenues is good to have, and but there are also other criteria which we will assess, such as sales pipeline, distribution channels, etc. In the end, there has to be a certain let's say we have to be comfortable with the fact that the company can pay back the loan. Yeah. And the technology fund is a supporting scheme. So if all the loans would be paid back, we will fail, because this means we are directly competing with the bank. So we are not directly competing with the bank. There is actually really also the need for startups to default in that sense, from a certain percentage of the total applications. But yeah, I think the best way is to get in contact with us, do the pre-selection, for example, and then we can give you a feedback on the prototype situation. And that's especially a question where we say, hey, come in early, do the pre-selection, and we can tell you exactly at what stage you should continue. Even maybe you're already at the stage where we go through the due diligence already, or we say, hey, maybe come back if you did this or that. Yeah. So you can get that input for free if you do a pre-selection, if you go through the pre-selection process with us.
Good question, just raised now. I think, does the applicant have to be a startup or a SME? Is that a requirement? So basically, the answer is that there is no requirement on the size of the company. Basically, the advantage a loan can give to a SME is a low interest rate. And so I guess just at a certain revenue level or at a certain credit worthiness level, SME would somehow the attractiveness of a loan from technology fund would decrease, of course. But we also have, and you can see that also on the portfolio side, several SMEs, more and more, which got funding from technology fund.
Yeah. Maybe on that aspect is really the technology fund supports a company and not like it's not a project financing vehicle. It's really the loan goes into the balance sheet of a company, and we don't do project financing. This is another thing which has been asked sometimes.
Yeah. Question. Yeah, in that direction was asked. What is the use of funds? Like, so basically the company during the application has to define how the funds will be used. And often that is for the further development and marketing of the products of a company. That means basically it's for most of the activities of the companies. So it's not project finance where we look, okay, we built, I don't know, we renovate this room and it can only be used for that room. No, it's rather bracketed in the whole activity of the company. And in that way, there's quite a liberty how to use efficiently that funds. How is it best for the company to use those funds?
Yeah. In some cases, it's a little bit a mix. For example, you see Swiss Shrimp as a portfolio company. It's a company which has one big project, and this project has been co-financed by a technology fund. But the company itself has been supported with the guarantee.
Yeah, maybe another question concerning the process. The question is, not all papers are ready yet for the application. Could we already apply still and provide these documents maybe in a few weeks, months?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of that? I think pre-selection never hurts, and you will get the fair feedback from us. But then the due diligence process itself, like that's not my personal opinion. I think it makes most sense if most of the documents are more or less ready, because otherwise, if you need another like 2, 3, 4 months to develop these documents, then the whole due diligence process has again, because the other documents might not be updated anymore. What is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, so we have a kind of a, how do you call that, maybe a bilateral due diligence process, meaning that we don't require that all documents at once are here. Instead, if we, like from technology fund side, if we see there are some information missing, we come back to you and stay in contact, and maybe ask for more data or documents if needed. So in that way, there's some flexibility concerning documents.
Yeah, in general, it's always good to start at the pre-selection process for sure, and then we take it from there. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, so there are a few more questions, for instance, about the 40%, 60%. I think there is a little confusion for And I agree, it is, so basically, what are the 40%, what are the 60%, what is the 100%? I think the confusion starts with the basis we choose. So we were talking about the definition of how the funds will be used. So that is basically the start point where we say, okay, that is 100% the financing requirement of the company. And of that 100%, technology funds can maximum contribute 60% in the form of this loan guarantee, which then translates to a loan, and the 40% have to come from another source. We already mentioned a few sources which are eligible, with some which are not eligible for the 40%. Maybe we can add one of these 40% sources is like it's, for instance, a company might get some money from research institutions, from Purdue, for instance, or for innovation subsidies. In that, and normally this money is linked to a certain activity. In that cases, we normally have to check case by case if that is eligible or not for the 40% home contribution.
Maybe another aspect is about the creditworthiness. Like if you define 100%, so this is our funding needs, then to reach creditworthiness, the financial plan has to show that the money can be paid back with, I mean, this is a fixed funding, let's say 5 million. This will be invested into different activities, and over the years, it can be paid back without an additional equity round.
Yeah, and so similar question in this direction just got asked. So question basically, does the company first need to get the 40% and then come to the technology funds? The answer is that is one way. The other way is coming first to the technology funds and then get the 40% is also possible. You have the advantage that, so the committee basically decides, okay, we give the company the 60%, provided under the condition that the 40% will be raised in the next 4 months. So, but 4 months, like calendar months. So that means it also helps to find these other means, already having the confirmation from technology funds, but then the company is a little bit under. If this deadline of 4 months cannot be met, the decision has to be renewed by the committee if that confirmation is still valid or not.
And then also the approval. I mean, it's more psychological, but I think the approval success for a company which cannot show any kind of commitments towards the 40%, the be a little bit lower to be approved. So if you don't have the 40% at that stage, when we go to the committee, at least like a non-binding LOI or something like that for potential investors could help at that stage, which show that, okay, or let's say a conditional investment where the potential investor confirms to invest if the technology fund provides the loan guarantee. So that's a way to kind of go around this dilemma of not having the 40% unless you have the 60% from the technology fund.
Like, next question is, management provides consultancy or is helping to strengthen the application during the process, especially if a company is applying early, maybe doesn't have ready all documents yet. What do you think?
Well, I mean, to a certain level, yes, but generally, no. I mean, a company has to be able to write their own financial planning. and we are not going to do the financial planning for this company. But if there is, for example, a mistake in, I don't know, in the income statement which we spot, then we tell the company, and we tell the company, hey, you might want to revise this financial planning. So we are kind of supportive in a way, but we are not gonna do the work for the startup.
Maybe a special point here is the CO2, because we are used to our own methodologies, how to calculate the CO2 impact of certain activities. For instance, let's assume a company reduces material use of a certain kind, or reduces energy use within their customers, for instance. So in that case, we can help the company, or also during the process, we'll certainly review and provide our own approach how to calculate the CO2 impact. For instance, how do you calculate upstream CO2 emissions, downstream CO2 emissions, and things like that. But the company itself has to provide the frame of the, let's say, a company sells a certain amount of products, and this product is used for a certain time. So this basic framework has to be provided by the company.
Yeah, this is often a challenge for the companies, and I think here we can help. Yeah, so no more questions?
I mean, there are a few questions left which we maybe didn't answer completely, but we certainly will look into them and shortly come back individually after the webinar.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so feel free to contact us by mail, phone, or also just by applying with a pre-selection and get the first feedback for your company and the eligibility to get a guarantee from Technology Fund. All right. So I think we all also thanks for listening and attending the webinar, and we are looking forward for your application and the interaction with you. So we hope that many of you are now confident to apply for the Technology Fund, and